Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining Childcare Aware of Minnesota for today's TEL Talk on the topic, Behavior is Communication, a panel discussion on supporting children and their teachers with Elizabeth Eng, Education Coordinator at Fraser School, Brenda Lowe, RBPD Coach Lead at the Center for Inclusive Childcare, and Katie Hoffman, Quality Improvement Manager at Childcare Aware of Minnesota. TEL Talks, or Topics for Early Learning Leaders, are monthly webinars for early childhood program leaders to facilitate solutions-focused discussions for your questions about the early childhood field in Minnesota. These one-hour webinars do not meet the standards for a formal professional development event, and participants will not receive a certificate of completion. TEL Talks are designed as a community building opportunity for leaders to engage and share ideas surrounding a specific content area. The TEL Talks team consists of Nikki Lepowski, Quality Improvement Coordinator, and myself, Christy Berg, Workforce Advising Coordinator. We work with Corey Woosley and Katie Hoffman at Childcare Aware to coordinate the TEL Talks. Some of our previous topics have included retain bonus application information for center educators and child care assistance program orientation. On Thursday, June 17th, Diane Benjamin will lead a conversation on telling the story of early childhood development. Note that TEL Talks will be moving to Zoom for our topic this summer, which will be heart-centered leadership. You will still receive an email from Childcare Aware with more information on the topic and how to register. Please visit the career advancement page of our website to view previously recorded TEL Talks. After today's presentation, you will receive an email from me with the PowerPoint slides along with any resources shared. Childcare Aware of Minnesota is a resource and referral network for early childhood education in the state. We assist families in finding a quality childcare program. We support the professional growth of early childhood educators with professional development opportunities, eager to learn online training, grants, parent-aware, scholarships, and trainer and RBPD support. We keep the community informed on the importance of quality childcare. Childcare Information Services is a department within CCA that specializes in statewide information sharing and assisting families who are looking for childcare. CCIS sends a welcome packet to new programs, and every 3 years they survey programs about their business policies and tuition rates. The rates are confidential and can influence CCAP reimbursement rates. CCIS receives calls from program leaders across Minnesota with general business questions and can route you to the appropriate person to contact. Childcare Aware partners with Center for Inclusive Childcare. CICC offers both individual and small group coaching. Currently, all coaching is virtual. In response to the pandemic, CICC has designed coaching focused on supporting programs as they navigate through challenges currently impacting care. Participants may choose 30 hours of coaching or a shorter option of 5 to 10 hours. CICC has a system of response in place to providers seeking specific COVID support related to a case of exposure in their site. To request support, programs should contact CICC at info@inclusivechildcare.org. Achieve, the Minnesota Center for Professional Development, supports individual, trainer, and RBPD membership applicants, approves courses and training events. The Achieve MNCPD website has several resources to share, including a job board, policy info, membership help, info on how to track down your high school diploma, and a virtual career guide. Visit mncpd.org to see more. The TEL Talks team partners with several organizations to offer coordinated resources surrounding early care and education needs. As always, participants of TEL Talks are encouraged to use the Ask a Question function in GoToWebinar throughout the presentation. We encourage you to please share your questions and thoughts on today's topic with us. We will read these questions and comments aloud during the broadcast, and if you would like to be unmuted to share your question, please click on the Raise a Hand button. And now I'm excited to turn it over to our panel today. Thank you, Katie, Brenda, and Elizabeth for joining us.
Well, thank you, Christy and Nikki, for helping us to organize this presentation. I am very excited to be here today on this side of the presentation process, I guess. As you saw in the slide, I sometimes place some behind the scenes support. So I'm very excited to be here and very honored to be joined by these two colleagues. I've known both of them for many, many years in different functions, but thought that these two were perfectly suited to come and join this conversation with all of you. Let me just get my PowerPoint set up in slide mode. I'm sure it's not yet. There we go. Okay. So yes, as I was saying, very honored to be joined by Brenda and Elizabeth. We are very excited to share on this topic. We each have our own unique experiences and approaches. And when I thought about this topic, these were the two that came to mind, and they've been so gracious and generous with their time and their talents that they're going to share with you today. And I just hope that you get just some great knowledge and strategies out of our time together. Here we are, the panelists that you'll have today. So why is this topic important? We decided that this was probably a pretty universal topic. We decided that this was something that probably each individual director, program leader, teacher, assistant teacher, anybody working in childcare or early education in any function probably has some questions and needs support at some point. And so we thought we'd pull together some ideas around this. And because we all know that every child is different, they don't come with user manuals, and approaches have to be different. There isn't a one size fits all. There's no cookie cutter approach that works for every child in every case. We also know that each teacher is different, and so we have to also account for that and know that strategies and the success of children depends on the relationship that teachers have with young children, but as leaders, it also kind of hinges on the relationship you have with them and the support that you can provide. And so we just want you to know that you do set the tone for that, and we're here to help talk through how to strategize with your teams, how to make children successful and feel engaged in the programming. So additionally, what we want you to get out of this today is, again, to feel supported as a professional. We know that this is really hard work. We've all been there. We know that this is it's not easy work. And so we want you to just feel from us that we hear you, we see you, and we want you to feel supported in these challenging times. We also want you to walk away with a couple of new strategies maybe you've never thought of or tried or even heard about. And we hope that we will be able to give you some things to try with your teams to support those children, to build those relationships and start to maybe make a difference, turn the corner with some challenges you might be having. And then finally, that you know what the supports are that are available to you. In the state of Minnesota, we have a lot of great resources. We have a lot of great support systems that are in place to help professionals like you and your teachers and the children and families. We try to approach it in a very holistic way. And so we're hoping to convey some of that to you as well. So with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague Brenda, and she's going to start with her presentation. I will be kind of forwarding the slides, but like Christy said in the beginning, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try to take some pauses along the way to address those. So go ahead, Brenda.
All right.
There we go.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for being with us today. Like Katie said, I'm one of those presenters where it's okay to, make comments and to each other even during the presentation. I'm one of those people where it's okay to talk to me while I'm talking. It actually encourages me, so feel free. And if you don't want to, that's fine as well. We, as early childhood leaders, we love that we are loved and needed. We are loved and needed by the children, by the families, our staff. But then there's that point where our need turns more towards enabling instead of supporting. There's a fine line that crosses over, and that's what we're talking about today. We want to get our staff to, we want to get it to the point where we're not being called in to just come and take care of that problem, and can you get this child out of the classroom, and where you as an early childhood leader feel like you're running down the hallway and having to come and deal with the situation. I'm sure I can't be alone in who that's happened to in the past. It used to happen to me all the time as a director. For a moment, think about how disruptive that can be to you. Think about yourself for a minute. I know you're not used to thinking about you and yourself. You're so busy taking care of everybody else's needs in your life, starting with your staff. But think about how unproductive that is. Think about how you get to your desk, you've done the other things that needed to be done in the moment, like get the breakfast cart out, and you sit down and you've got your coffee, maybe it's your Diet Coke, whatever it might be, and you're ready, and maybe you've just went into 5 minutes of work, or maybe it's even you've got as far as 15 minutes. Oh my gosh, that's amazing, 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, you're in thought processing mode, you've got questions answered, you've got priorities going, and you're thinking and you're planning, and all of a sudden, Miss Brenda, we've got a situation. I can't be the only one that happened to. So as a director, as a leader in our field, I was constantly getting interrupted. And as much as I want to be supported and helpful, it also started to really impact my own work. I was struggling with getting things done and getting things done on time, or feeling the stress to get it done later on instead of when it was supposed to be done when I had my planned time. And so that's another reason why we want to talk about this today. And we know that having a strength-based support system in place creates this win-win situation for both the early childhood educator and the child. So for our early childhood educators, we want them to continue and maintain their power and authority within their classroom. I experienced, and I'm sure you've experienced as well, that when we're called in to give the child the look, or can you come and talk to him or her, what happens is the child starts responding to us and not the early childhood educator instead. And then it gets to the point where we're the only one that the child is responding to, and we're the one that's building the relationship with the child, not the early childhood educator. And that is not what we want. We also want that early childhood educator to feel empowered and confidence in their skill. I like to call it like a little toolbox, the teacher toolbox or the early childhood educator toolbox. I want them to have those skills in there so that when another situation comes, they can open that toolbox and let's see what's going to work, at least for this moment, for this child. They're gaining in their supportive tools. They're feeling supported from their educator. They're establishing and getting to those developmental milestones, which are so needed, and which is our goal anyways. And think about the family and how, they're finally getting a phone call or having a positive conversation on the successes that their child is having in the classroom versus that always frustrated conversation that they were having where we were having some challenging behaviors. So that's why we want to talk about supporting versus enabling today. And I'm wondering if everybody opens up their chat, is there any other, just quickly, you can just comment, is there any other strengths that you would add to this list for either the early childhood educator or the child? I kept my list short today so that I didn't overwhelm you with a PowerPoint, but I can imagine. I like it when you are able to share thoughts back and forth. All right, let's talk about, okay. Yeah, let's talk about, thank you, Katie. Let's talk about why this is important. For some of you, this is not going to be easy. For me, this was not an easy task. Remembering what your goal is that you want the child to remain in the child, and also that you want to be not called just to deal with the situation. Think about how it is when a early childhood educator establishes that relationship with the child. Think about the difference that makes when when you walk into the classroom and the early childhood educator is telling you, no, just give him 5 more minutes. He had a rough morning with mom. He just needs a hug and he needs 5 minutes. And you're like, oh, wow, really? And the child's looking at you like, yeah, I don't have the words to tell you that, but that's exactly how I'm feeling right now. And I trust my educator that she knows what I need and she's able to communicate with this. And you know what? She still loves me. She still likes me. It's okay that I'm having that moment and I need that 5 minutes. She still loves me and wants me anyways. And think about the response. Think about how the child responds to the early childhood educator and how they know each other's triggers. They know each other's signals. It's different. It's a different experience when there's that bond between the two of them, and that's what we want to happen. Also, when we're approaching this with a strength-based system, when we're creating that win-win situation for our entire center, we're creating an environment for growth for both the early childhood educator and also the child. Now, there are going to be times where there's that immediate danger situation where you're getting called down and maybe a chair is being thrown across the room, or there's something violent happening that needs your support and attention. It's going to happen. And also there's that situation where your educator is petered out. They're exhausted, they're tired, they need that break. And maybe it has nothing really to do with the classroom. Maybe it's something that happened at home. And there was just one more thing and they just need a moment. They just need that break and they go to the bathroom for 5 minutes, whatever. What's nice is to have a system. Think about what is your system? What is your plan for when this does happen? It kind of reminds me of that emergency preparedness plan that we all had to come up with for our centers, a few years back, if you all remember that, and still maintaining that. And it reminds me of when we first kicked it off. We didn't, as early childhood educators in our field, we like to talk about rainbows and butterflies and glitter. Things that sparkle. We don't like to talk about ick stuff that happens in our centers. But what happens is we end up having a more reactive response versus a proactive response to the situation. That's why having a plan in place, whether that be a walkie-talkie system with a code red, we have a situation, whatever your system is, have that plan with your team to figure out what's going to work best. What you don't want to have as part of the plan is that every single day at 9 a.m., or 9:05 after the child's been dropped off, you are being called to run down the hallway. I want you to ponder for a minute and think about, or you can write it in chat, think about what does enabling your staff versus supporting your staff look like for you and your team. Because again, remember, this is all about what is my system? What am I going to do? What's going to work for my team? Because what works for Brenda's team may not work for Elizabeth's team, which may not work for Katie's team, and it may not work for your team, but you might be able to take our systems and implement it into your own. So think about, what does enabling versus supporting your team look like for you? Just think about that, or write in the chat. When I was thinking about the answer to that question for myself, I thought about that it means enabling would be where I'm doing it for them versus doing it with them. That's what and I thought about my goal. My goal is that I want to empower my educators, my team, and I want to promote their independence. I want to empower them and I want to promote their independence. And that was, when I was a director, those were the two things that would resonate with me. And I would think about when the times got tough and when it was an uphill battle. How am I going to do this? How am I going to create this situation where I'm promoting independence and I'm empowering them? All right. Katie, can we go to the next slide? So this is one of my favorite conversations to have. It's really, really, really important as you're thinking about your system and what's going to work for your team is, who is your team? Who are they? What are their communication styles? Think for a moment of us, all of us. There's differences in our communication, in our learning styles, in how we process things. Some are very outspoken, some of you are more quiet, some of you are really loud like me. And within your own families, even think of your sisters, think of your kids and the differences amongst all of them. What we forget to do is we forget to think about our team. Our team is our team, but within that, who creates our team? We have, and this is just for me, this is just what I encountered, and I'm sure I can't be alone in this. I have some of my staff that they were the ones that, I know you're busy, I know you're busy, I don't want to bother you. I know you're busy, I don't want to bother you. Yeah, I am busy, but if I don't know what's happening, if we're not communicating on what's going on in your classroom and with your children and with your families, I don't know what's, and then I end up being reactive versus proactive when it's too late, almost. Some of our staff are quiet, and I love this word, fester. I shouldn't even tell you this, but I used to have, like, I can't make this stuff up. I used to have an educator that she was so laid back and chill. She had this great swag about her, just cool, and just nothing ever got to her until it did. And it was like, what's the analogy that you have, like a tea kettle that would boil over? She wasn't boiling over. She was the tea kettle that blew up. And so then she would blow and lose it. And I was like, wait a minute, I just talked to you an hour or two ago and you were fine, everything's fine, you're just so late. And then all of a sudden you're blowing your cork. Like, what's going on here? So we used to call her Aunt Fester because it was kind of like our giggling. She knew it, I knew it, and we would kind of giggle about it because it was her way of remembering to not fester, instead to be able to communicate with as she went along, which was hard for her to do. And for me, it reminded me to be patient and to check in with her on a regular basis and on a deeper level than just, hi, how are you? You good? All right, good. You know, I needed to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive with her, and then I was able to meet her where she was at. So we would laugh, joke about it. Wasn't funny in the moments, but you know, now she's a director and she's absolutely amazing. So she just spread her wings. Then you've got a lot of staff like me, and that's cool because you always know what's on their mind. But on the flip side of that, those are the staff that can also overshadow the others on the team. And that's not what we want either. And I can tell you from experience, once upon a time, back in the day, when I was a teacher, was that moment where my voice needed to be heard. I was not shy about raising my hand, and if that meant I was overshadowing my coworkers, okay, because right now I care about myself and my team. Yes, I care about but when I'm having a moment, I care about myself and my team, and I know you've got staff that are feeling that way too. I know I can't be alone in that. So let's talk a little bit about systems. Katie, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. This is, so what I'm going to talk about next is systems, my system that worked really, really well. And this system was a system that I got from another director or two that it worked really, really well for them. And it was my daily rounds. And some people like to call them, I think, Katie, you call them check-ins. And I mean, I don't care what you call them. For me, it was, I set up a time, and this was hard for me to do. It was not easy because I'm so busy like you. I set up a time every single day where I went around and visited my teachers in my classrooms. And I carried a clipboard, like I'm not even kidding. Like I carried a clipboard and I had my pen, and this is my way to touch base, to in with the team, not just one teacher, but the team. And, you know, how are you? How's it going? How are you? What'd you have for dinner last night? What's going on with Zach's parents, and how's Jackie doing in the sandbox? Do you need black paint? Did you just tell me that the toilet's overflowing? What? So it didn't matter what it was. I was able to touch base with that team. My goal was to do it on a daily basis. Now, I know that some of us have smaller teams, so it might be a little easier. Some of us have larger teams, so it might be a little harder. You got to figure out the system that's going to work for you. And scheduling a time to meet up later might be super important too, because there's some conversations that you cannot have like in the classroom in front of children. But it was a neat experience. And at one point I remember I would, if I forgot or I didn't have time or I got interrupted with making my round, I would have teachers that would come up to my office and be like, what's wrong with you today? Or what's going on with you today? You didn't come by and say hi. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't, did I? Sorry. But I used to carry that clipboard, and I would, it was nice for me because I've got one of those brains that just, it's like squishy during the day and I can't remember everything. Or if I have a message for someone, sometimes I forget to tell classroom A when I told classroom B. I used to have like my sticky notes and I would write notes on there. This is what I want to touch base on with every classroom. And the other thing I would do was follow up. This was the perfect time for me to follow up on something that we were addressing. Like, did you have a chance to talk to Katie's mom? You didn't have a chance. When are you going to talk to Katie's mom or dad? Elizabeth's conferences, when are those scheduled for? So sometimes you have to follow up, and this is a way to do it. And this helps you remember back to your system. This helps you with being proactive versus being reactive when it's almost too late. It helps you to address and strategize and plan with your team and the families in advance versus after the fact. And then you know what's going on in each of the classrooms. Also, my teams used to really love the fact that when they were talking, and sometimes it was answer that I needed to get back to them later on, they really loved it when I would make that note. They would watch me to make sure I was writing the note. They really felt validated and heard that I was paying attention to them in that moment. And I noticed that. And so I kept doing it. And it really established a good, strong trust between them and I. Think of a time when you've started a conversation, or you started a conversation with someone and one of your staff, and you found out new information on a child that impacts how you would have or are going to handle a situation. Has that ever happened to you? That happened to me quite a bit. I'll give you an example. Military. Finding out that mom or dad, I've had moms and dads that are about to be shipped out or just got shipped off. That will affect child's behavior. I've had conversations where, I can't make this stuff up, where all of a sudden the parents moved and now the child is having significant behaviors because they're having anxiety because they left all of their friends at their old house and now they're at this new house and there's boxes everywhere. And what the parents forgot to tell you. That never happens, right? With these situations where they just separated and they forgot to tell you. These are the types of things that are like good to know that impact a child's behavior. And then when you find out, you're like, oh my gosh, if I had known what I know now, maybe my reaction or my proactive behavior would be different. I don't know if that's happened to any of you, but it's happened to me multiple times. One last thing. I know you're thinking, Brenda, lately I've been living out of a classroom. So what do you want me to do? Okay, I gotcha. I know. I've been there, done that too, where I've lived in classrooms. I was talking to one of my colleagues and she had the idea to, when you're in a classroom, think about that as your classroom walkthrough. And think about how when you're there, you're like eyeballing stuff. What do you want to follow up on? I'm noticing that the parent board hasn't been touched in a week. We're going to talk about that later. Or I'm noticing that in the bathroom, there's no toilet paper on the toilet paper rolls. I am having a chance to get extra hugs and interactions with children. I'm having a chance to interact with the coworkers in the classroom. And what was interesting that my coworker said, or my colleague had said, we were trying to figure out strategies on this exact point, is she said, you know how as leaders, we like to go into one particular classroom. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. For mine, it was the infant room because I could get a couple things done. And then she's like, no. Make sure you rotate around. If you are in a situation, if you're in a situation where you have to rotate around to do coverage, then try to make sure you're not just always going into one room by default. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. Whatever. I did, and it made the world of difference. And you know what? When that teacher, like let's say she had the flu and she came back and I was able to tell her some great things that I saw in her classroom and do some follow-up or have some follow-up questions on some other things, like she really appreciated that, or he really appreciated that. I was paying attention to their classroom. So anyways, those were just a couple of my ideas. If you have some of your own tips and tricks or techniques that you have tried, feel free to share those in the chat, because we all are looking for fresh ideas and how we can be more proactive with ensuring that we're meeting our goals with our team and stopping or at least reducing the enabling situation that, and we want to be supportive to our team. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brenda. Nikki or Christy, are there any questions that you want us to pause for at this time?
There's nothing in the chat or the question box at this time. So just a reminder to anyone that's on, if you feel comfortable to type in there, or you can always raise your hand and we can unmute you also. So great. Thanks, Brenda. Lots of really great things to ponder there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to turn it to Elizabeth Eng, and she's going to share a couple more ideas and strategies and tips and tricks that she has perfected along the way and shared with many people. So I'm excited to hear from her. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yes, hi. Well, in listening to Brenda and all of the focus of this presentation, we're hearing a lot of similar words. We're hearing being more proactive rather than reactive, more supportive. And I think with communication, it's a tricky thing, and behavior is a tricky thing to really facilitate. This positive communication stems from early childhood educators to the families, to the children. And so as leaders, we want to model and really show how we can support. So I think one thing when we think about behavior, you're getting a call, the classroom needs support, we want to observe. So we want to really find out what is happening and why. It could be as simple as they are waiting in line for 5 minutes while each child washes their hands. Something simple that you can quickly, as a team, as professionals, sit and talk about and think, you know what? Let's eliminate that. Let's play a game before we all stand in line. So we're going through the list of what can we do to really be more preventative with some of these really big behaviors that might happen. So we're looking for why they are happening. It might not be as easy as just going in and seeing that they're waiting in line. It might be it happens a certain time of day every day. The child, you find out, like Brenda referred to, you find out new information that they're not eating breakfast. They're in such a rush in the morning that they are coming and they are thrown in the door. Dad has to get to work, no time. So looking for why these behaviors might be happening, rather than just thinking, oh, this child every day in my classroom, I can't do it anymore. They're coming and they're so grumpy and they're so angry and they're pushing and shoving. Let's look deeper as to why that is happening. I think another thing that you will find a lot of triggers. Lots of, as early childhood educators, we're very set in our ways. Children are as well. And you're mixed in a classroom or in a home setting with many children playing and learning together. So what is it that's really affecting that child? Maybe someone is giving a big shrill every day and it's going in the ear and he's really having a hard time censoring, processing that. And then I think another one to really be mindful of is how can you set up your environment to be planful and to really set up the children in your setting. How can you, before they even come in the door, can you get yourself in check and your classroom to be welcoming and inviting and ready for children of all abilities? And I think one of the most important things, which we've touched on with staff and educators together, is maintaining a relationship with the child. And I know this is hard because of children that are experiencing behaviors. It's really hard to come the next day and find joy in them and find something that you are going to celebrate. And I think if we keep this in mind, though, that we have this positive relationship, it will help decrease some of the negative behaviors that's happening or some of the struggles that you're having. And I think it stems back to the educators, leaders, top down, finding what we can find in common with the children. And so that when they come each day, they're welcomed, it's a new day, and it's fresh. Next slide. I think a big thing that we've talked about, and I think we have to all the time think of, is preventative strategies. How can we really be proactive? I know that we talked a little bit about the daily rounds, and Brenda talked about just the program leaders coming around each day, and I believe that really does make a difference myself. Even the children seeing you in the classroom when it's not a problem time. So making an effort to come around the rooms just to play or just to sing a song or say, hey, Susan, to maybe the lead in the classroom. Hey, Susan, wow, you got new classes. That's really cool. So that the kids can see you in a different way other than the person that's called when it's a really bad time and they need help. You can come and just be a friend and want to sit and read a story. And I think that's really important to be able to do. I know it's really hard and not everybody can. You are busy, like Brenda said. We all have our agendas of what we have to get done on our own schedules. But if we know that this will make a difference in the lives of the children, in the lives of the early childhood educators, in the lives of the families, then we need to make more time for that. And I think it can be as simple as proactive. So you're setting up your environment. We touched on a little bit about that. You don't have the running spaces. You're going to look at your classroom or your home and think, oh yeah, that's maybe not a great idea to have that giant space there. And that is where I'm seeing a lot of the struggles each day, is in that same space. You might think outside the box and maybe plan an activity in the gym. I know the gym tends to be, or the recess tends to be a time where you can take a deep breath, you can talk with other educators, you can regroup. But if we are preventative and we are proactive, we could maybe plan something really cool and fun, and it engages everybody. And maybe a friend that is really struggling because they're not fitting in, and that's when you're seeing those behaviors, that can really make a difference and decrease some of the challenges that you're seeing. I think a very important part of behavior is it's not just the child. Our behavior communicates as well. So as early childhood educators, we are communicating with our body language, we're communicating with our verbal language, and how that children are absorbing that. And I've said it many times that children have big ears. They also know when you like them or know when you're feeling really annoyed by them. And we want to model that we can be calm. We want to model that we are in charge. Getting back to a little bit of what Brenda said, we want to have the educators in charge of their classroom be confident, know that they can do it and take the lead, but we are there to support. And we never want to say that differently, but we do want the children to have that respect for their teacher or their educator. I think when we are calling for a leader to come and help, or sending a child away, we are really communicating to them that we can't handle them, or it's really hard for me and I can't do it right now. And I think some children, you will find that even in your care and in your centers, is that they've maybe heard that many times because they've been asked to leave. So you might be the third place where this child has now come and started. And so you might see a lot of these really big behaviors because that's what they're used to. They're used to, if I am mad, I'm gonna push my friends and then I'm gonna be able to leave. And because that's what I know, it's gonna be too hard. I'm gonna go home, or I'm gonna get called to go home, which is easier than staying and really doing the hard work. And we want to really ensure to the child that we are calm. No, it might be a stressful time. We want to take our deep breaths and we want to be calm, and that we can handle it. We can take care of you. We've got this. And it's really important to share that with the other children in the classroom too, is that, you know what, might look kind of scary right now, but we're in charge and we're going to keep you safe. And I think really simple, calm, and clear messages are important. So not to over verbalize everything. Oh, we're doing this because, so Tommy's really upset because he didn't eat breakfast. Just very calm and clear messages are key for children, for adults, and for it to be a really proactive, productive classroom or home setting where you are working. Next slide, please. Preventative strategies. So you're skipping along perfectly. Thank you. Family partnerships. I think we've talked a lot about partnerships with the staff that we work with, the educators we're together with every day. A really important thing is family partnerships, and they are the experts on their child. And I know we can think different things about different families, and you might have red flags that, oh, this family, they're not really receptive, or yeah, they're letting this child do this at home, and now why do you think they're doing it in our classroom? But it's really important to build the partnership and work together because they are the experts on their child. And it gives you a chance to really show the child that you care, you respect them, you respect their family, and that will help in the future in your classroom. I think just talking about the plans. So, you know, supporting, you might find children that you interact with have therapies. So they might have an occupational therapist or a speech therapist that are really working with them outside of your environment to really rope in, get the parents' permission to be able to talk and share information with them, and finding out the strategies they're using in those settings that you can use in your setting. And I think that really helps with consistency. I know with behaviors and stressful situations, the more consistent we are, the more predictable we are, the more supportive we are. So creating this plan with family, with other educators, is really key for the child. And Brenda touched a little bit on it as well about the communication. So yes, families, they will hear oh, Tommy bit again. Susan really struggled again during group time, doesn't want to sit at group. We want to try to really change that to be more of a positive communication back and forth. So you're going to check in with each family, what works best. Some parents, they don't want a daily tattle sheet. I think most parents don't, but they don't want to know even a flash email every day. They might prefer a weekly check-in at the end of the week. Hey, here's 3 things that this child really is working on and really did really cool things. And here's 3 things that we're still going to practice. It was a really kind of a mixed bag of a week, but you're finding what's works best for each family. And each child is individual and has individual differences, and each family does, and each staff, as we know, staff members. So I think finding what works best for each family, most importantly, using a compassionate lens. So listening to families, listening to the early childhood educators that are in the classroom daily doing the difficult work, building both groups up with really positive feedback that they are making an amazing difference on this child's life. What they're doing is really valued, and we care about their child, we care about them, and the most important thing, I think, is the child's success in each and every environment. And I think so when you are thinking about your environment and who you are interacting with, it's really key to think of it in a more preventative way. How can I build supports and relationships? And that relationship part and support goes with everybody. Early childhood educators working together and children, working with the children and the family. And I think that's a really important thing to be pondering and thinking about.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. That was really good information, and I agree. I think we're trying to reinforce some similar language and be really consistent about the messages that we're trying to send. I just have a couple of kind of final wrap-up slides, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the other reason that this is so important, but Elizabeth alluded to it a little bit, that we see that children do get expelled from early childhood programs. And like Elizabeth said, your program might be the 4th one that they've landed in. And so that just creates a cycle of trauma really for that child. And so like Elizabeth said, they're gonna maybe exhibit similar behaviors to try to keep the cycle going. And so the research and the reporting on suspension and expulsion in early childhood started back in 2005. It has been ongoing. There's lots of new and updated research. And most of the research early on was based in kind of public school pre-K and K-12 comparisons. We're starting to get more into kind of how do we measure this, because if it's happening in public school, Head Start, pre-K, we can probably guess that it's happening in licensed private for-profit programs. So, but we're finding things that are alarming. So boys are expelled 4 times more often than girls, and this was back in 2005. So things may be different now. But also then this component of race, that the rates of expulsion are higher for little children that are African American. And so thinking about those kinds of things, and again, that cycle of trauma, and how in our conversation today, we really want to try to equip all of you to be the support, to be the concrete foundation for which your teachers can grow and be confident and be able to care for and guide those young children within their classroom, within that program, so they aren't going to move to another one and have to start all over. Relationships take a long time to build, and if they're having to move and do it again and again, that sets them up for not being able to be so successful in early elementary. And so like early childhood is where it's at. And I'm just reminded of a story, and I tell this in a lot of different arenas, but for a long time as, an education coordinator or a supervisor of teachers, my approach would be to go in and fix it. Go in, be the fixer. And in my brain, I kept trying to say, it's not rocket science. Like, these are children. This is what they need. This is how we do. And at one point in my career at Fraser School with Elizabeth, it dawned on me that this is rocket science. Like, these children need different things every minute of every day, and there is no one size fits all. And so I completely changed the way I approached supporting teachers and supporting children, because it is high stakes, it is important, and it is rocket science. And so if you can think of it that way, that maybe you are a very seasoned early childhood educator and you know a lot of things about development, and to you it comes very second nature, to a brand new teacher out of school or a teacher who is just getting started, it's not to them. And so to share your knowledge, share your calm demeanor, share the strategies that you have is really important. So, and then finally, like I said at the beginning, help is available and you don't need to do it alone. If you're a new leader in a program, you might need some help and strategies, and it's okay. Minnesota has a lot of great resources. The Center for Inclusive Childcare is one that you can access for support with young children in your care for inclusion, health and safety, infant and toddler. So I encourage you to check out their website. The graphic on this slide is obviously much too small to read. We will send it to you in a PDF so that you can see. If your program happens to participate in Parent Aware, you have access to some of these to these resources, but outside of that, you've got many other resources to tap into. So Fraser, as an organization, is a leader in autism and mental health and services for special needs. So their website is filled with great resources and information that you could share with families, that you could share with your teams. They have trainings available. So I encourage you to check that out. And then the state of Minnesota has an initiative where they do offer mental health consultation for early childhood professionals. And I know we don't talk a lot about mental health for ourselves as professionals. We probably know there's a lot of information about infant and early childhood mental health and how important that is. But it's also important that the professionals that are caring for those children and holding them are also being supported and held. And so I encourage you to think about and explore the idea of a mental health consultation for yourself, for your teams, just to kind of help process the hard work that we do. So that's the end of our presentation. We'll open it up for questions if people want to unmute and ask. Looks like we have about 7 minutes left, so I want to leave some time for that. Nikki or Christy, any pressing things that you want to highlight for us?
No, I think everything that all three of you said is very impactful and really important to hear, even if you've been around for a long time, right? It's a good reminder. And we had a comment about that also, just mentioning that, Katie, what you said was powerful. It is rocket science. It is hard work. So yeah, thank you all. And we'll leave it open for a few minutes. If anyone wants to type anything in the chat or the questions box, feel free to click the hand icon, and happy to take you off mute also.
Well, again, I just want to thank Brenda and Elizabeth for taking the time to, again, pull together their knowledge and their wisdom and the time to share it with all of us. It's been really rewarding and a good reminder of why I do what I do. Even though I'm not in direct care anymore, I miss it and I remember how hard it is, but how rewarding it also is when you can build a team and find successes, and like Elizabeth said, find the little joys each day, because it is hard work. So thank you both for being here. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm sorry, we're talking at the same time. Go ahead, Brenda. I did want to share just with COVID. We didn't talk about it. And I do think with all that we have gone through, just as individuals living in the world, it's really been stressful on us and the children. But it does really play a part in how you can make this communication and this strengthening of your team work, because it's a little different nowadays and we have to adjust even more so. So I commend everybody on the work that they do working with young children right now, because it's an extra stressful time and you're having to really pump it up even more because of the health and safety that we have to hold to. So, but thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you all who are in attendance. We
Yeah,
appreciate your time as well.
I just had one comment that
Yeah,
I
I
wanted to share with the group too, was that, again, another kudos, thanks to all, and just mentioning that this individual really likes thinking of supporting rather than enabling, and that whole enabling doing it rather than for them. So really great takeaways.
Great. Yeah, like I said, if
Thank
you
you.
need to
You know, another thing I was thinking of, Katie, when you were talking earlier and you were talking about, you know, sharing your expertise with your team, I was reminiscing back when I was, you know, in the center and thinking about how the difference in the atmosphere that would take place when we were more proactive and when we did have a chance to put our brains together. You know, it's that old saying, great think alike, or, you know, whatever you want to come up with. But, you know, when me and my staff had a chance to be more planful or more mindful and come up with ideas together, it was so much more impactful for the child and the family, actually, versus if we were just trying to put band-aids on the situation or come up with, you know, quick and immediate solutions. When we were able to take that time, it just made more long-term and deeper impactful moments. And that was something I was thinking about when you had mentioned that.
All right, there isn't any other entries in the chat or the question box at this time. So I think we'll go ahead and close out. Christy, anything left that you want to mention before we close out on today's awesome webinar?
I would just say thank you to our panelists so much. And for our listeners, I'll be sure to send out the PowerPoint to you all and a link to listen to the recording so you can refer back to that later on in the future if you'd like to do that as well. Thanks for joining us.
Great, thanks. Happy Thursday, everyone.